Good afternoon, everyone. We are back at the second day, first session of the 3-day long annual conference of Bharata Vidya Charcha Kendra, which focuses on the theme Interrogating Societal Crisis and Configuring Responses, Indian Perspectives. Yesterday, we had started off with Professor Kaushiki Dashgupta, and it proceeded further with Dr. Saurav Kumar Rai and Dr. Timmy Goswami. Today, we shall be focusing in this first session over the next 2 hours on the sub-theme of crisis and the marginals. In this session, we have today with us two very eminent speakers, Professor Rupert Berman, who is Professor of History at Jadavpur University, and Professor Anil Kumar Sharkar, who is Professor, Department of History, University of Kolkata. Before I proceed further, I wish to thank the whole audience who have congregated today for having come together to celebrate Bharata Vidya Charcha Kendra and its academic enterprise through this annual conference. I first begin by introducing to all of you Dr. Rupkumar Berman, who shall be our first speaker. Dr. Rupkumar Berman is a professor of history of Jadavpur University. He is currently the coordinator of the Center for Ambedkar Studies at that university. Dr. Berman did his graduation and master's course and later the PhD from the University of North Bengal, Darjeeling. He served earlier at St. Stephen's College, Darjeeling till 2001, and then at ABN Seal Government College, Kuch Bihar up to 2002. The Department of History has come to Jadavpur University from 2002 to 2006, and at the Department of International Relations, 2006 to 2009, first as a lecturer and then as a reader. We also find that he has authored 12 books and more than 100 research papers as published in various national and international academic journals. Sheerly an astounding amount of quality academic work. Among them, From Tribalism to State, reflection on the emergence of the Kok Kingdom, early 15th century to 1773, which has been published from Abhijit Publication, New Delhi in 2007. Contested Regionalism, a new look on history, cultural change and regionalism of North Bengal and Lower Assam, from the same publication in 2007. Ethnicity, Cultural Nationalism and Democratization, a study of contemporary Bhutan, published from the Department of International Relations and Pragya Prakashan in 2007. Fisheries and Fishermen, a socio-economic history of fisheries and fishermen of colonial Bengal and post-colonial West Bengal, from the Abhijit Publications in 2008. Partition of India and its impact on the scheduled castes of Bengal, New Delhi, Abhijit Publication 2012. Jatpat, Jati Rajniti or Dalit Pratarka, from Kolkata, Alpha Books 2019, The Origin and Evolution of the Enclaves of India and Bangladesh, a historical study, from Abhijit Publications in 2019, Nature, Communities and State and Environmental History of Bengal and Assam in 2019, Practice of Folk Medicine in Sub-Himalayan Bengal, a study of folk medicinal practices of the Rajbangshis in historical perspective, 2019, and very lately, Politics, Casteism and Dalit Discourse in 2020, Caste, Class and Culture, the Malos and the Advaita Malla Burman, and the History of India and Bangladesh in 2020 are some of his great works. At present, he is working on Forced Migration and Human Rights, Dalit Discourse, Changing Nature of Caste of Post-Colonial India, and Nature-Human Relationships. Through this introduction, I now request Professor Rupkumar Berman to kindly deliver his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Rupkumar Berman. Sir, please.
To all of you. And first of all, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude and thanks to the organizer of this annual conference, the Bharat Vidya Charcha Kendra, in its 19th annual conference. I'm really grateful to them, the organizers, because they have invited me to share some of my ideas on the topic they have given, that is crisis and the marginals. The crisis and the marginals are basically the two sides of the same coin. More or less, crises and marginals, the two concepts of social science or two concepts of our daily lives, are interrelated. And that is why today I want to talk about one theme, that is crisis, marginals, symbiosis, contextualizing the marginals. That is basically the relationship between crises and the marginal communities or the marginals, and how their relationship or how their crises of the marginal people can be contextualized in the historical studies or in the studies of social science. This is the main purpose of the topic that today I want to discuss or want to talk here. So now the first important issue, that what do we mean by the concept called crisis and the marginality or the marginal people. Crisis is more or less known to everyone when we are facing a lot of trouble in our contemporary world, particularly during the pandemic period. We have seen what are the different types of crises the human society as a whole is facing. It is not only related to the health hazards, it is equally related to the question of the economic issues. It is equally related to the social segregation, the term which is being basically popularized by almost all across the world by all media, that is called the social distancing. This term itself is signifying a kind of a crisis of human society, that we are maintaining a distance. So this distance is one of the major problem in the problem of crisis or in the concept of crisis. On the other hand, the marginality or the marginal communities or the marginal people are equally important for understanding the entire history of human civilization. Though the margins basically kept in the margin of the text. Sometimes we use this term margin. So you write something in the margin, not in the main text. So they never been considered as the part of the main text in the historical studies or in any discipline. So this is the main problem or the crisis of the marginal community, that they never got the place in the main text of historical writings or in the main text of academic domain or in the discussion on the common people or human civilization as a whole. So here we'll find that the crisis of the people and the marginality are symbiotic in nature. When there is crisis, we'll think about the marginalization. When the people are in disadvantageous position, we find that they are marginal. So this marginality is again related to the crisis. So here the relationship between marginal and the crisis or crises and marginals are more or less symbiotic in nature. That there is crisis, there is marginality, there is marginality, there is crisis. So now this is the background. In such a context, we have identified a few characters of the relationship. The first one is that the concept between the concept like marginality and crisis is contextual in nature. That in particular context, one group of people or one community or one region or one nation or one particular subcontinent or particular continent may be in crisis, but at the same time, other parts of the community, other parts of the society, other parts of the world, other parts of the region may not be in crisis. So one particular context, one group of people may be in crisis. So when they are in crisis, they can be considered as a type of marginal people, or they are being identified as marginals. So this is contextual. Suppose one person is being identified as a minority in particular region, or one person is identified, or a group of people is identified that they are marginal because of their economic status, their social status, or their class status, or their cultural status. The same people may not be identified as marginal. Suppose think about the people of Assam. When they are going to Delhi, they are often being branded that these people from Northeast India, they have a kind of cultural similarity with the people of that part, as well as they have physical similarity with the people of China and Japan. Sometimes they may be identified as the non-Indians too in Delhi. But when they are coming back to Assam, they feel proud being the people of Assam. They feel proud for their own culture. And when we are representing these people in our historical writing, we are giving the examples from these people. Think about the discovery of India by Jawaharlal Nehru. He was talking about the rich cultural heritage of India. Then he has given the example of the Khashi tribe, that they are the followers of matrilineal. So in India, we are practicing the matrilineal, which is very, very significant when we are always talking about in the discourse of women's studies that we do not accept the patriarchy or patrilineal or patriarchal, all these things. When we are giving the example in case of in India, we are dependent on a marginal region. So this is contextual. This region is branded as marginal, and they are facing the marginality, they are facing the crisis. At the same time, in broader aspect of our Indian history, they are exemplified, they are glorifying us. Try to imagine the Indian sports personalities. They are mostly from the backward regions. So when they are representing India, we feel proud for them. But when we are representing the same communities in our historical domain, in our social science, in our academic discipline, we found they are being identified as the people of marginal regions or as the people of marginal community. So that is why this is called contextual. That marginality and crisis, this is contextual. Number two, that has been identified in our study, that is called the marginality and the crisis is relational. Why it is relational? Because when we are thinking that this group of people are advantageous because of their, suppose, for their caste identity. But we'll find that the same communities same people are facing a lot of trouble in terms of their economic background. In many occasions, we have found they are facing a lot of trouble because of their economic belonging or in terms of their class character. But in terms of the caste character, they are enjoying a kind of superiority, a kind of advantage, a kind of the advancement. So they are not marginal in particular relationship, whereas they are marginal in terms of another relationship. In terms of economic relationship, they may not be the upper class, but in terms of the social relationship, they are enjoying the status of the upper caste. So that is why we'll find that it is relational. And again, it is relational in this sense. This is the question of opposite. If there is right, there is wrong. If there is left, there is right. If there is sky, there is earth. The world is full with oppositions. In such a context, we have found that the marginality as well as the concept of the crisis are relational. It is relational. Now, the fourth point that we have found, that is to some extent the question of difference and opposition. Why difference and opposition? The concept of difference is the driving force in the human civilization. Still, since the very beginning of our growth of advanced civilization in different parts of the world. Let me clarify this point, why we are using the term difference. If you go to the first sloka of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as Krishna Dvaipayan Vyasdev has codified, the Sanjay, who had a kind of power to see what is going on in the Kurukshetra or in the battlefield, he was asked by Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra said, Sanjay, please tell me what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Please tell me what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra and what my sons, try to identify, try to follow that, what my sons and the sons of Pandu are doing. In this term, you will find a kind of difference. My sons means the sons of Dhritarashtra or the Kauravas, who are in the ruling power, who were in the ruling position and that context, but the Pandus, they were in the opposition. So here lies, you will find a kind of difference. And this difference is the driving force in historical writing too. When we are talking about the Aryans, we are giving them reference. The Aryans are the point of reference, whereas when we are identifying the other people of this continent or the subcontinent, they are being identified as non-Aryans. What does it mean? That we are writing the history from the point of the Aryans, so that is why others are non-Aryans. But if you think that the people before the coming of the Aryans or before the other than the Aryan civilization, we had our history in India. We had other communities, those who have been branded as non-Aryans. But if you think they are the indigenous people, then what would be the point of difference of the Aryans? They would be identified as non-indigenous. But here we'll find the reference is the indigenous and the difference is the Aryans. So here we find a kind of difference, and this kind of difference again is related to the point of reference. And point of difference and point of reference again is related to the next point in our study that we want to show, that is called the opposition. And opposition is essential for the further involvement of the writings of history of marginality and the crisis. So this is the background, and in such a background, I would like to contextualize the marginal communities in our Indian subcontinent with a new perspective. I don't know how far it would be accepted by the audience or by the scholars, but I want to focus on this type of thing that would focuses on the contextualizing the relationship between the margins and the crisis. Now, the first point is in our study, we have found that this is called the representing the marginals. How the marginal people have been represented in our historical writings or in our society. This is the first point. Let me clarify this point. Now, I have already raised the issue that the history of the Aryans have been studied with a point of reference. They have not been studied with a point of difference. But if we think into the point of difference, then we will find that the history has represented, or historical studies so far been written, has represented the indigenous people of this continent or this subcontinent as in different names, like the Dashas. Then you find the term the Doshus. Then we have found they have been represented as Rakshas. Then also Kiratas, Pishachas, and so on. And there are some other scholars of expert of ancient India. They must be focused on this point, that how they have been branded. So this brand name signify their point that they are marginals in the society. They are margins in the society. They did not get the proper place in the main text of civilizations because they were kept in the margins as dashas, as the rakshas, as the pishach. Now try to understand the point as a student or as a conscious human being, that the concept of rakshas is it acceptable? Is it acceptable to a person that we can believe on the existence of rakshas? I don't think so. This is an acceptable one because we have not seen this kind of rakshas. But what does rakshas mean? A horrible, a dangerous, a creature. What he can do, the Rakshas can do, everyone had a kind of imagination. Now people have been branded as the Rakshas. Then try to understand another point called Pishach. What is the meaning of Pishach in Bengali language or indigenous Indian languages? All of us have some idea. Pishach মানে কি আমরা কিন্তু বুঝি বলি এই লোকটা একটা পিশাচ. What does it mean? So we can get an idea that some people have been branded as pishachas. Some of them are branded as doshus. Who are the doshus? We have different kind of doshus, and we have different kind of the kiratas, mlechas, and so on. Now, during the ancient and early medieval period, we have found different texts, religious texts, mostly written by the scholars of the upper caste background and they have tried to compose a kind of history that in India we have a different kind of communities who are considered to be inferior in terms of their social origin. They are obviously the people of margins, so they must be the margins as identified, like the uh, Adhams, Adham Shankara, Ashat Shudra. These are the terms as identified, or and these are the terms as recorded in the Puranas, like the Brihad Dharma Purana, Brahma Vaivarta Purana. In these texts of early medieval period, we have found that many new castes which have been originated due to the growth of civilizations, they were recorded as the Ashat. হোয়াট ইজ দ্য মিনিং অফ অসৎ? আমরা সকলেই জানি অসৎ মানে কি, তার একটা বিরাট সিগনিফিকেন্স আছে, অ্যান্ড দেন এগেইন ইট ইজ কন্টেক্সচুয়াল। টু সাম পিপল ওয়ান পার্সন মে নট বি অসৎ, তার কাছে মনে হতে পারে তিনি ভীষণ সৎ, কিন্তু অন্যর কাছে মনে হতে পারে অসৎ। বাট dishonest or dishonesty means these are the dishonest. So how we are identifying these people? Not only as dashas, rakshas and pisache and kirata of the early text, later we have found the Adham Shankara. Adham Shankara, Uttam Shankara, Madhyam Shankara, these are the terms. Then we have found also the Ashata Shudra, the Shata Shudra, and also we have identified as the auspicious or the untouchables. So they are not touchables, they are untouchables. Try to imagine the text or the account left by Faxian or Fahian. What he has recorded? He has recorded one incident that just I was going through this text of a student of class 6. I am not talking about the higher class. One class 6 textbooks has recorded that the report of, or the account of Fahian, that I am coming to the cities, oh Chandals, give me sight. You go away so that we can avoid your touch. This is the description recorded by Fahian. So how they were treated, how they were branded, these are not only the records as left by the religious texts, but that has equally recorded by the foreign travelers' account. So these are some of the points in the ancient period or in the early medieval period. And the medieval period we have found those who have changed their religion, they also did not get the proper place in the society. We have found that in the Muslim society too, we have the concept of arjal, atrab, and so on. And in the let us coming to the next part of this representation during the colonial period. How they were represented in the colonial period? In the colonial period, we have found at the beginning they did not have any idea how these people can be recorded, because they realized that everyone is equal. But gradually they found that in India, caste is a major issue, and the caste is a parameter by which people can be differentiated. We can classify them on the basis of the caste, and we have found here the colonial records have left different kind of names. They have given different kind of names to the same people those earlier recorded as Kiratas, Dashas, Doshus. Here we have found very briefly, I am talking in very briefly, that they were recorded as depressed classes. Then we have found depressed caste. Then we have also found the aboriginal caste. Then we have found the semi-Hinduized caste, semi-aboriginal caste, Hinduized caste, Muhammadan castes, and also the concept of the untouchables or the antajad or the auspicious. All these records they have maintained in the colonial records in different occasions. These records obviously continued the policy of representation by the dominants, the people of the mainstream or who have the access to the power. The people having the right or having the ability to access to the power, they have recorded the people of the margin in such a way which is basically the continuity of the traditional method of recording in the text which was started in the ancient period. But during the colonial period, we have found that they have also tried to follow the divide and rule. And they have founded several sponsored political parties like the Indian National Congress, in the All India Muslim League, and later on they have also sponsored to the foundation of Justice Party for utilizing this emerging middle class of the lower caste communities in the favor of the colonial government. And the colonial government from the 1920s have adopted a policy that is called the favorable treatment, a policy of favorable treatment which was initiated 100 years back or in the colonial period that eventually led to the formulation a new kind of representation in the 1930s that is called the concept of scheduled caste. The concept of scheduled caste eventually transformed into two other names in the post-colonial period, particularly in 1950 onwards. In the post-colonial period, we have found the concept of scheduled tribe that came into reality because many of the communities earlier recorded either as aboriginal caste but not as tribal communities, aboriginal caste. In the scheduled caste list, they are also identified as scheduled caste, but after the independence of India, we have found they have been recorded as the scheduled tribe. And not only that, from 1950 onwards, we have found the growth of demand for the identification of more backward communities in India. Instead of the progress, we have found people are looking for their backward identity. And the first backward class commission under the chairmanship of Khalilkar, and later the second backward class commission under the chairmanship of Mr. Mandal, these are well known in our Indian history, and these eventually led to the development of the concept of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBCs, and also AMOBCs, MBCs, and so on. So here we have found that the policy of representation, which was started in the ancient period, is being continued in our post-colonial society, in our contemporary society, and here the marginalized peoples always identified with certain names which are signifying their marginality. They never get the freedom from the nomenclature. Nowadays, the media has started a new policy of identification called the Dalits. This is the new creation, and although in the point of government or administration, this term is not acceptable, but in the media reports or in the popular discussion, we are using the term the Dalits. So the term the Dalit, the term the Rakshas, the term the Aboriginals, more or less same. These are the continuity and the creation of new terms. So here we have found the representation or how they were represented in the historical period, starting from the ancient to still date. We have found they always been recorded or kept in the margins in the historical records. The second issue here is very significant. That is called the what kind of crisis the people are facing, the marginal people are facing. The first point that here, that crisis, the first one is the problem of identity. The problem of identity, how they are being identified. Try to look at the history of West Bengal. I am giving example. Some of the participants may not be happy to see it, but this is the reality. You have seen very recently several universities were set up by our West Bengal government. Now, when they are looking for the appointment of the vice chancellor, it has come to the media report that for particular university, a person to be identified from the particular community. What does it mean? Why it is? Means we have encouraging the communities in such a way that this community is this community. They are not the part of the society as a whole. So এই যে একটা ধরনের প্রবলেম, একটা ইউনিভার্সিটির জন্য বলছি যে একটা পার্টিকুলার কমিউনিটিকে মানুষকেই ভিসি হতে হবে. Why? And that is being accepted. And that is not only the popular demand, that is also accepted as a policy by certain governments in different parts of our country. So that means we are actively encouraging a particular community as the dominant community of particular region. So there we are encouraging the division of among the same communities. This is the problem of this identity. And when we are identifying, suppose Gandhi বলেছেন যে তারা আছে হরিজন, try to imagine এক নম্বর এয়ারপোর্ট, আমাদের কলকাতা এয়ারপোর্টের কাছে 2 নম্বর গেটের কাছে one day I went and I was looking for a particular address. Then I asked, then he said that you go to this Horijan Bosti, but be careful, this is Horijan Bosti. What does it mean? It means that the people, those who are called Harijan, they did not get the proper place in the among the people of the society. They are still Harijan because they are basically hailed from a particular group of communities, those who are identified as Harijan by Mahatma Gandhi, the father of nation. How he is branded? Harijans, not as the people of our Indian society as a whole. So this is one kind of crisis. Now, how the academic people are identifying these people, that you are a Dalit. What does it mean? You are Dalit. And many of the Babu Dalits are there, means they are claiming themselves as Dalit in the academic discourses, but they do not have idea what is the crisis their own people are facing in the bottom of the level, in the bottom of the society. So here we have found that this term, when we are utilizing, when we are using in our popular discussion, in our seminar or in our discourses, then we have found this is a term which is actually not glorifying the marginal communities. This is not the matter of glory. This is not the matter of prestige for them. They don't think they are Harijans, but we, the people, we have branded them as Harijans. যদিও গান্ধী ভাবছিলেন যে হরিজন বললে বোধহয় অনেক কিছু ভালো, হরির জন, but practically it did not happen. Now later we have found that they are being identified simply as Dalits. So Dalit is not a term that is a very prestigious one for these people. Now, not only that, when we are recording these communities, basically in the terms of their caste identity, in terms of their community identity, in terms of their linguistic identity often. So here, suppose in this period of election, we are clamoring that these particular seats would go in favor of this community. So we are creating a kind of internal contest. We are encouraging this internal contest instead of their whole integrated identity. This is the first crisis they are facing as a whole. The second point that we have realized very sincerely through our field work, this is called the soft casteism. Soft casteism, why it is called the soft casteism? Soft casteism is very critical thing, that you are not behaving in such a way that is root in terms of physical behavior. We are not killing someone. We are not burning someone. But we are following a such policies which are not visible openly. You cannot prove. But we are following certain things which are the sources of internal violence, psychological oppression. You cannot prove easily, but this is the reality. Because of the government policy that we have already discussed, that under the colonial and post-colonial governments, they have provided certain opportunities for the marginal communities in case of education, in case of the political field, as well as in case of the employment. Job opportunities, political opportunities, and their representation, all these things have created a kind of contradiction among the people, those who are not enjoying the reservation. So many cases we have found a soft casteism is being followed, particularly in the center of higher learnings. Center of higher learnings, we have recorded in our fieldwork that this is soft casteism is very, very dangerous because it is very difficult to prove, but the institutions are encouraging in different way. This is the second crisis they are facing, the marginal communities are often facing when they are very minor beyond their regions. Why it is less in the primary level or in the high school level? Because in that part they are majority. They are majority. Suppose if you go to certain villages in particular district, then you will find the SC, ST, OBCs are 90% in many villages, 90%, even 98%, even more than that. So there is no question of this kind of sarcasm. But when the same student of the same school is going to get the higher education in a very well-known institute of India, he or she is facing this kind of trouble. The media reports can give this kind of continuity of subcasteism. This is the great problem in their life, or in their life, the great crisis. The next crisis that we have identified, this is relating to the political representation. This is a very dangerous thing. Though politically, the Constitution of India, or particularly the Government of India Act of 1935, has provided an opportunity of political representation to the marginal communities in the Legislative Assembly or Legislative Council, or in the present Lok Sabha or the then Imperial Council. We have found that was grabbed by the uh, upper class controlled organized political parties. How it was possible? We have found Dr. Ambedkar was talking about the political power of the backward communities. He himself was defeated in his own state. He himself was defeated in Maharashtra, or the then Bombay, in the election of 1946. He did not have the opportunity to be a member of the Constituent Assembly from his own territory. He became the member of the Constituent Assembly because of the people of Eastern Bengal, not from his own state. And that is not for the political party he had organized. It is because of the courtesy of two Congress MLAs of Bengal, along with others. We have found the Congress political party members had supported him. So, in the post-colonial period, we have found that poverty, the economic crisis, that is also the point in our discussion, that is being utilized by the organized political party. There you will find that the political lack of political voice, how they are, they are being influenced. They are dancing as directed by the organized political party. When the right-based political party are indicating them or controlling them, they are looking towards right. When the lefts are coming, they are going towards left, and then again they are coming to the right. So I have branded, or I have identified this as right, left, right, right, left, right. In such a way they are behaving, or they are representing, although sometimes they are trying to place their political voice, but it is nothing but the right, left, right. Then economic crisis, that is the another major issue. Here you will find the poverty of these people is the capital of the others. Poverty, তাদের দারিদ্র অন্যদের জন্য হচ্ছে মূলধন. Poverty of people is the capital of the non-marginals. Poverty of the margins is the capital of the non-margins. Why? Because since the last 100 years, if you see, we are always talking about the poverty elevation. We are always talking about the declining the rate of the BPL and so on. But practically, it is nothing but the statistical jugglery. Though in percentage it has decreased, but in terms of total, it has not decreased. It is being continued. And still now, up to 2001, 2021, what we are saying, that we'll give these kind of things in the election. You come, please join this kind of political party. We are offering this kind of gifts to you before the election. So people are still in crisis, and there you will find who are in more crisis, particularly the people belonging to the marginal communities. There is a very sharp and direct relationship between the class and the caste that I cannot discuss in details in this short time, but many scholars have studied in details how class is related to the caste. Then this crisis is a major issue and major plus point for the political parties of mainstream, or political parties of the main text. Then another point that I will discuss very briefly, because I have already taken 39 minutes. Now the next point, that is how they are being sorry, another point is there. This is called how they are being represented in media at present. If you think about the representation, how they are represented in the text, or how they are being represented in the text, or in the cinema, or in the TV serial, or in the Facebook, একটা দুটো এক্সাম্পল দিচ্ছি আপনাদের, বাংলাতেই বলি, ভাল লাগবে। অনেকেই বাংলায় রয়েছেন। বঙ্কিমচন্দ্র লিখেছেন তার বিখ্যাত উপন্যাস, ভেরি পলিটিক্যালি ভেরি হাই সাউন্ড। হি রোড, পুকুরে পুকুরে মাছ মহলে ভারী হুটাহুট ছোটাছুটি পড়িয়া গেল, জেলের দৌরাত্রে আর প্রাণ রক্ষা যায় না, জেলে মাগিদের হাঁটাহাঁটিতে পুকুরের জল কালি হইয়া যাইতে লাগিল। বঙ্কিমের ভাষা। এবার স্বামী বিবেক পরমহংসদেব, যিনি কিনা পরমহংসদেব হয়েছেন বিকজ অব দি রানী রাসমণি, তার ইতিহাসটা আমরা কম লিখেছি। সেখানে গদাধর হলেন রামকৃষ্ণ পরমহংসদেব, তার সাক্ষাৎ শিষ্য সেখানে কি লিখছেন, তার সাক্ষাৎ শিষ্য সেখানে লিখছেন, ঠাকুর সিধা লইয়া পঞ্চপাটিতে সহস্তে পাক করিয়া খাইতেন, এবং আমি ঠাকুর বাড়িতে প্রসাদ পাইতাম, তাহার রন্ধনাদি সমস্ত জোগাড় আমি করিয়া দিয়া যাইতাম, এবং অনেক সময় প্রসাদও পাইতাম। ওইরূপে রন্ধন করিয়া খাইয়াও কিন্তু তিনি মনে শান্তি পাইতেন না। আহার সম্বন্ধে তাহার নিষ্ঠা তখন এত প্রবল ছিল, মধ্যাহ্নে ওইরূপ রন্ধন করিলেও রাত্রে কিন্তু তিনি আমাদিগের ন্যায় জগদম্বাকে নিবেদিত প্রসাদে লুচি খাইতেন। কতদিন দেখিয়াছি ওই রূপে লুচি খাইতে খাইতে তাহার চক্ষে জল আসিয়াছে, এবং আক্ষেপ করিয়া জগন্মাতাকে বলিয়াছেন, মা, আমাকে কৈবর্তের অন্ন খাওয়াইলি। Try to understand, this is the voice of not me but Ramakrishna Paramahansadev. This is a representation. Now another famous novelist, very well known, everyone knows his name, Vibhuti Bhushan Bandyopadhyay. আমি রুক্মিণী দেবীর খর্গটা এখানে আর পড়লাম না, ওটা যদি সময় পান একটু পড়বেন। রুক্মিণী দেবীর খর্গ কখনো যদি পড়ার সৌভাগ্য হয় তাহলে দেখবেন হাউ হি হ্যাজ রিপ্রেজেন্টেড দ্য ট্রাইবাল কমিউনিটিজ অফ ঝাড়খণ্ড রিজিয়ন অর পুরুলিয়া বাঁকুড়া রিজিয়ন। এখানে আমি তার পথের পাঁচালী থেকে একটু পড়ছি। সে অর্থাৎ দুর্গা ঢুকিয়া অপরাধীর দৃষ্টিতে মায়ের দিকে চাহিল, সর্বজয়া বলিল, এলে, এসো, ভাত তৈরি, খেয়ে আমায় উদ্ধার করো, তারপর আবার কোন দিকে বেরোতে হবে বেরো। বৈশাখ মাসের দিন সকালের মেয়ে দেখো গে যাও, সেজুতি করছে, শিব পুজো করছে, আর এত বড় ধারি মেয়ে, দিন রাত কেবল টো টো। সেই সকাল হতে না হতে বেরিয়েছে, আর এখন এই বেলা দুপুর ঘুরে গিয়েছে, এখন এলো বাড়ি। মাথাটার ছিঁড়ি দেখো না, না একটু তেল দেওয়া, না একটু চিরুনি ছোঁয়ানো, কে বলবে বামুনের মেয়ে, ঠিক যেন দুলে বাগদিদের কেউ। বিয়েও হবে ওই দুলে বাগদিদের বাড়িতে। ট্রাই টু ইমাজিন, মাই ফ্রেন্ড, what is the message he wanted to give regarding the representation of the Bagdi, is a very dominant community in terms of their number in West Bengal, including part of Bardhaman, where it is being seminar is being organized. Now, this is the representation, and we have a lot of examples. Try to imagine Sharat Chandra, how he is represented. In Ramesh Shrimati, try to go to him. Tini bolchen, Bagdi Betara Chor. This is the language used by Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay. But nobody has dared to oppose it. But this is the trend they had. This well-known novelists try to represent these kind of people in such a way. Now, how they are represented in our present day? Try to go to the cinema. Try to look at the TV serials which being popular, which are very popular in our daily life, because without TV serial, nobody can imagine their family life at present, particularly during the lockdown period. How the marginal people are being represented. তারা কিভাবে রিপ্রেজেন্টেড হচ্ছে, একটু খালি নামগুলো দেখবেন, একটু তাদের কথাগুলোর যে ভাষা তাদেরকে দেওয়া হচ্ছে সেগুলো একটু দেখবেন, তাহলে দেন উইল গেট এ কাইন্ড অফ আইডিয়া হাউ দে আর রিপ্রেজেন্টিং, হাউ দে আর বিং রিপ্রেজেন্টেড। এবং শেষ কথাটা আমি শেষ করব, কারণ সময় শেষের দিকে। সেখানে ডিভাইডেড রুলের কথা আমরা বলেছি, যে দে আর বিং ডিভাইডেড, and actively they are being divided in the name of subcaste, and there you will find the close relationship that is called the subcasteism or intra-caste conflict, intra-tribal conflict. একটা রিজিয়নে আরেকটা রিজিয়নের মধ্যে, একটা সেম রিজিয়নে ডিফারেন্ট কমিউনিটিজ, they are creating a lot of trouble, and that is being actively encouraged by the government. Here West Bengal is the best example. Try to imagine what they did. They have set up the Namashudra Unnayan Parishad, set up the Rajbangshi Unnayan Parishad, set up that Unnayan Parishad, but those who are more marginal, for them there is nothing. because they are, in terms of their number, they are minor. So this is being actively encouraged by the government in different way. Now, these are the types of crises at present they are facing, and we can continue the discussion for a long time too. But before that, I would like to conclude, because my time is basically 40 minutes. Then here, the first point, as observation, we have found that the crisis and marginality is symbiotic. There is crisis, that is why they are marginal, and they are marginal, that is why there is crisis. Since that crisis is being accepted, that is being going on, the marginality is going on. There is marginality, the crisis is going on. Now, the second observation, that is the crisis is the capital of the privileged. Crisis is the capital of the privileged or the advantageous structure all across the world. If you think about the Industrial Revolution of England, if you think about that revolution of particular country, if you think about the French Revolution, you will find obviously the participation of the people of the margin or the so-called third state in case of that state. But here we have found these marginal people, they are playing the main role in any kind of revolts, any kind of uprisings, any kind of revolution. And they are, of course, the capital for whom? Those who are trying to exploit their sentiment. So এদের দারিদ্র হচ্ছে অন্যদের কাছে ক্যাপিটাল. In industry you will find the same thing, in trade union you will find the same thing. Our labor leaders are not the laborers. Our Jyoti Basu, who was the MLA in 1946, how he was elected? He was elected as the member of the labor organization, not as a labor, not by the vote of the laborers, but because of the vote of the labor organizations. So you'll find a lot of things we can discuss in this point, that crisis is a kind of capital for whom? For the disadvantageous. Then the last that we have started with, that is called the question of difference. The difference is the driving force, that you are not the people of the main text, so that is why you are margin. Since you are margin, you cannot come to the main text. Whether you try for Sanskrit edition, where you are go for any kind of things, but it is your ultimate thing that you will always be branded in such a way that but name can be changed, brand name can be changed, but the continuity of the trend of identification as marginal, that would be continued. So I like to conclude here that the world is full with oppositions. It is full with opposition. It is left, right. There is sky and there is the water. There is earth. There is the. So everywhere there is the opposition. And here we have to identify the right things. In such a mixture of opposition, we have to identify the right thing, and that right thing obviously representing the opposition. And this opposition is essential for the continuity of this relationship between marginality and the crisis. And here also there is the need of opposition in their representation. So that is why we need an alternative version, not the imposed version of historical writing, not any particular type of historical approach, whether it is subaltern studies or Dalit discourse, that is also imposed. By whom? By the non-subalterns, by the non-Dalits, they are trying to do. But here, I think, since it is the question of opposition, here is the need of an alternative version, alternative method of representation of the marginal people and their crises in the domain of historical writings, in the domain of social science. So this is the brief presentation on my part. So once again, I would like to thank the organizer for providing me an opportunity to be here in the annual conference of the Bharat Vidya Charcha Kendra. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kumar Berman, for your very thought-provoking, contentious, issue-based presentation. We have a couple of questions, of course. The first of them come from Dr. Anirban Banerjee from the Department of Sociology, the University of Burdwan. he says he has asked that how far do you think that the Dalit leaders like Mayawati of Bahujan Samaj Party could contribute for the upliftment of the Dalit classes? Uh, would it be possible for them to do it?
Okay, so how they have behaved in the context of UP, particularly Mayawati, she became the chief minister of the state. The problem is that when they came into power, they tried to follow certain principles within the basic structure of the administration or within the basic opportunities as provided by our Indian constitutions. It has been found if you want to judge their activities, then we'll find they did not get that much of success because the only political power by their own hand cannot resolve the whole issues within a very short period of time. There is the need of the support of others, though their opponents, but we have found that it is not possible in such a way. However, they try to follow their own principles. They try to implement their own principles, what they had promised before the elections. That is my observation.
So there is just one more question, which is actually it comes from two people, Shujit Maji and also Bapun Chakraborty. Shujit has been asking whether you could throw some light on the role of the Justice Party for the upliftment of the Dalit class, and Bapun Chakraborty in the same context is wanting to say that do you think that with the whether the political parties use the image of the subaltern context and then after election the marginalized people are discriminated from the mainstream development of parties promised to them. That means the manifesto part and the promises, whether they are discriminated.
Okay, very good questions, and thank you for raising these questions. First, let us talk about the Justice Party. The Justice Party, as I already told you, that this is the third sponsored political party by the government. The Congress was the first sponsored political party. Why I am using this term? That is significant. Though it was named as national, but it was founded by the British government for its own safety. That is more or less known to everyone. That when the Congress was started opposing the government, they were looking for the second partner, and they found in case of the foundation of the Muslim League, the second political party. But when both the National Congress and the Muslim League, they came closer in 1916, particularly in 1916, that is the period when the Congress even was talking about the home rule, that is the right to self-determination during the course of the First World War. They were looking for the third alternative, and the third alternative, that is called the Justice Party, and that was founded basically with the direct sponsorship of the British government. And here we have found the Justice Party tried to implement many of the policies they were talking about for the upliftment of the depressed classes. There was no concept of Dalit, my friend, in those days. As I already told you, this is nothing but the creation of the media from the 1970s. So we cannot use the term Dalit in that sense. But here we have found the Justice Party was looking for the social justice. Why they are looking for social justice? Because they found that there is injustice. And if there is injustice, and justice can be brought with certain programs, and this Justice Party tried to do that. But unfortunately, in the election of 1937, the Justice Party, though it was in power in Madras presidency from 1920 to 1937, but in the election of 1937, it lost the election, and the Congress Party that got majority in the Madras presidency, and Congress ministry was formed. And when the Congress ministry was formed, it had tried to implement the new principles led by Chakrabarti Raja Gopalachari, who later became the Governor General of India. Now, Chakrabarti Raja Gopalachari, he had changed the policies followed by the Justice Party in that state. And that led to the formulation of another new political party that is called the Dravida Nadu Conference. And the Dravida Nadu Conference eventually called the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam at DMK. Now, we are not going into details what they did or what they tried, but this is the background. The next point that how the subalterns, the term, my friends, the term subaltern history that came into existence in our historical domain of India, particularly from 1970, very significant time. We have to remember the point 1970s. The 1970s not only seen the history of the growth of the Dalit discourse in India, also we have seen there was the Black movement, Black Panther movement in United States in the 1960s. Then we have found in the 1970s that was the period of the cultivation of history of origin of state. New alternative versions were coming up regarding the origin of state, regarding the alternative history. There we have found in 1978 particularly the anthropological version, the cultural anthropologist has propounded the idea, the origin of state with new perspectives and the relationship by denouncing the existing notions either the Marxists had followed or the non-Marxists tried to show. In 1978, we have found in the Indian context, the representation of the subaltern classes began to grow by Ranajit Guha, and they continued these principles up to 20 years, from 1980 to 2000. They have published several volumes, at least 12 volumes after 2005. But we have found they did not address the point of the caste issue very seriously. Very seriously, they did not raise the point. Even they said, can a subaltern speak? কত বড় কথা যে তারা কথা বলতে পারে না. Try to imagine if you think about the composer of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata and Bhagavad Puran. Who was he? He was Vashadeva. He was the son of a fisherman or fisherwoman. তারা কথা বলতে পারে না, কথা লিখতে পারে. So we have found a lot of problems in the subaltern studies. Now the question he has raised very serious, that yes, they are always being used during the time of election. That is why I use the term, they are the flag bearers. Flag bearer, march korbe, michil korbe, mara jabe. Try to understand in the all disturbances, whether it is Nandigram or in case of any other disturbances in India, kara mara jacche. You have found the people belonging to the marginal communities, tara mara jacche, kintu jara tader lead korchen, tara kintu mara jacchen na. Even try to understand যারা নিজেদেরকে অনশন করার ভান করছেন তারাও কেউ অনশনে মারা যাচ্ছেন না. আমরা সকলেই জানি এই মার্জিনাল কমিউনিটির অনেক মানুষ শুধু না খেয়েই মারা গেছে. এটা কিন্তু রিয়ালিটি. একটা সিনেমায় দেখানো হয়েছিল যে ময়নাতদন্ত, সিনেমাটার নাম, বাবু এসে বলছে লোকটা মারা গেছে, ময়নাতদন্ত করতে হবে. ময়নাতদন্ত করার পর দেখা গেল ও কিছু ভেতরে কিছু নেই, বিষও খায়নি, কিছু খায়নি. তখন পাশে থাকা একজন বয়স্ক মহিলা, একজন বুড়ি, তিনি বললেন, বাবু ময়নাতদন্ত করে কি হবে, ও তো গত 10 দিন কিছু খায়নি. এই যে রিপ্রেজেন্টেশন আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে অনশন করার ভান করছি, অনশন করে মরছি না, অথচ মানুষ না খেতে পেয়ে মারা যাচ্ছে. কেন মারা যাচ্ছে? কারণ তারপরে আমরা ভুলে যাচ্ছি. ইলেকশনের আগে আমরা একসঙ্গে সবাই খাচ্ছি, আসো সবাই একসঙ্গে খাই. কিন্তু after the election, we are forgetting the promise. That is the observation. That is why I have used the term right, left, right. Though some of the leading leaders, controlled leaders of these communities are being facilitated. তাদের কিছু কিছু নেতৃস্থানীয় ব্যক্তিবর্গকে কোনো না কোনোভাবে সান্ত্বনা পুরস্কার দেওয়া হয়ে থাকে. এটাও কিন্তু আবার ঘটনা. এটুকুই বলার.
Sir, we have completely run out of time with you. Professor Sharkar has been waiting for a long time. I'm very sorry, Orjoma, but I cannot take your question anymore because we have completely run out of time. So we extend our heartfelt gratitude to you for giving your time to us and for speaking these words. Maybe some other time we'll be able to get on with the debate and the discourse that you have initiated. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Very quickly, therefore, we'll move on to Professor Anil Kumar Sharkar, who's been waiting for a very long time, and I think he's already joined us once over again. But before I go on to Professor Sharkar, I just wish to tell all the participants today that there has been a slight change in the schedule for the next session, which starts at 5:30. Dr. Arjun Dev Sen Sharma, who was supposed to speak on the occasion from 5:30 onwards, he's unavailable. And so we'll have Dr. Shubhashachi Dasgupta speaking first, and then we'll take on the paper presentations in that session. Professor Berman, are you still there with us? Professor Berman?
Yes.
Can you take one more question for us, because we are still struggling to get in touch with Professor Sharkar. So the question which is there is that Orjama Ghosh is asking us. Recent writers have tried to reinvent mythical characters like Eklavya and Vashdev as Dalit heroes. Do you think these reinventions are a literary protest against the hierarchical order? Do you think societal crisis can provide Dalits necessary ladder for social mobility? We have time, a little bit of time. Will you please briefly touch upon this?
Okay, thank you, Arjuma, for your raising the issue. Yes, it is being done. That we always want to create some heroes. Why we are want to create some heroes? Because this is contextual. I have used the term contextual. Try to imagine the history that Rabindranath Tagore is famous and he is known to everyone. We know him. Everyone knows him. Now, he wrote the biography of one person of India, though his biography is written by everyone. Whose biography he has written? The biography of Raja Rammohn Roy. When he has written? He wrote in 1933 at the 100 years of the death anniversary of Raja Rammohn Roy. But when he was born, it is not known to us. So, in the 100 years of birth centenary, that was forgotten by everyone. Nobody knows when he was born. But when he died, we know. So at the time of his death in 1833, that was not celebrated in such a way. But in 1933, his death anniversary was celebrated and his biography was written by Rabindranath Tagore in 1933 because this is the demand of the time. So demand of the time. The first point is that this is the demand of the time. And because why it is demand of the time, as I told you that the issues of Dalit discourse that is coming up basically from the 1980s. Though Dalit studies had tried to stop the voices of the Dalit discourses, there is a basic difference between the Dalit discourse and Dalit studies. Dalit studies is a kind of study which basically try to show that Dalit basically is the oppressed. But in Dalit discourse, you will find they are not only oppressed, they can speak, they can protest, they can raise their voice, as Om Prakash Valmiki has said. Aur kitna din, or how many days? We will continue to follow this kind of things. The question mark, there should be a question mark. Question mark na thakle, that cannot be a piece of Dalit discourse. It may be a Dalit studies. So this Dalit discourse is in a very strong condition. Now, in 1997, when Kancha Ilya has tried to show, even in the subaltern studies, he wrote the article that the method of historical writings by the non-subalterns as well as the subalterns, they fail to represent the alternative voice, the alternative method of historical writing that the Dalit discourse want to show, the raising questions, and they're raising their heroes. So this hero raising is the context, and this is the time because this is the demand of the time. But the problem is that, what is the problem? That we'll find that when we are trying to present some heroes or to create some heroes, eventually we would find they are being transformed into a kind of God. দেবতার মতো হয়ে যাচ্ছে। মানুষ কখনো দেবতা হয়? মানুষ কখনো দেবতা হয়? আমার তো মনে হয় মানুষ দেবতা হয় না। মানুষ কি দেবতা হতে পারে? But when Buddha was born as human being, after 500 years of his death, he eventually described as Devata, as goddess, as one of the avatar, one of the incarnation of the Dash avatars, as propagated by Jayadeva in his famous composition of Jayadeva. Dash avatar বলে চালিয়ে দিচ্ছেন, সে তো অবতার ছিল না, সে তো মানুষই ছিল। সো এই যে মানুষ পরবর্তীকালে হিরো হতে হতে দেবতা হয়ে যাচ্ছে, আমরা দেখেছি এখানে কিছু কিছু মানুষের মূর্তি বানিয়ে পুজো হচ্ছে, বিশেষ করে উত্তর চব্বিশ পরগনা জেলায়। আমি নামগুলো বা নাই বললাম, তোমরা সকলেই জানো বা আপনারা সকলেই জানেন। তো এই যে প্রবলেমগুলো হচ্ছে, মানুষকে দেবতা বানিয়ে দেওয়া হচ্ছে এবং ইন সার্চ অফ হিরোজ, সেটা করতে একসময় একটা তৈরি হচ্ছে ডিমান্ডের জন্য, কিন্তু লং টার্মে গিয়ে দেখা যাচ্ছে দে আর ট্রান্সফর্মিং দিস পারসন, দিস হিরোজ as devatas or semi-gods. But in case of Ekalabya, he is not being transformed as devata, but he is being presented as one of the fine example of the indigenous people, of the people of this country, as a great hero. A great hero তো সব জায়গাতেই রয়েছে, শুধু একলব্য কেন? আমরা যদি রানা প্রতাপের রাজ্যে যাই, আমরা যদি উদয়পুরে যাই, আমাদের স্টেট যে ইনসিগনিয়া রয়েছে সেখানে কিন্তু উইদাউট ভিল উই ক্যান নট ইমাজিন এনি স্টেট এমব্লেম অফ দিস পার্টিকুলার স্টেট। কারণ এই ভিলদের যে তীর এবং তাদের যে ভূমিকা এই রাজ্যের হিস্ট্রির ক্ষেত্রে উই হ্যাভ ফাউন্ড দ্যাট ইজ বিং স্টিল রিমেম্বার্ড। সো দেয়ার ইউ উইল ফাইন্ড that not only this type of the construction of heroes, but also their role is being respected or accepted in different states in different occasions. And this is the contextualization. And nowadays, why the government is giving sponsorship for the installation of statues of different other heroes? এই প্রশ্নটা তো আসতে পারে। যেমন আমরা দেখেছি সরকার টাকা দিচ্ছে যে অমুক কমিউনিটির অমুক নেতার একটা মূর্তি বানাও। কেন বানাও? বিকজ দে হ্যাভ সাম নাম্বার ইন টার্মস অফ ডিউরিং দ্য ইলেকশন, এটা তারা তৈরি করছেন। কিন্তু আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে অনেকের যারা অনেক বেশি কন্ট্রিবিউশন আছে অথচ নাম্বার কম থাকার জন্য তাদের কোনো ভয়েস নেই। আমরা একটা এক্সাম্পল দিই যে পশ্চিমবঙ্গে বা বেঙ্গলের কনটেক্সটে যদি দলিত ডিসকোর্স আলোচনা করতে হয় তাহলে অদ্বৈত মল্লবর্মণের নাম ছাড়া তো হবে না। অথচ তার নামে মূর্তি তো দূরের কথা, পশ্চিমবঙ্গে একটা রাস্তার নামকরণ আজ পর্যন্ত করে উঠতে পারেনি, এখনো করেনি, যদিও অনেকবার ডিমান্ড দেওয়া হয়েছে। অথচ আমরা দেখতে পাচ্ছি অনেকের মূর্তি দিনের পর দিন উন্মোচিত হচ্ছে। কেন হচ্ছে? কারণ সংখ্যায় মেজরিটি আদার কমিউনিটিস। এই যে প্রবলেম, এখানে কিন্তু আমরা দেখব যে দুটো জিনিস হচ্ছে যে কনস্ট্রাকশন অফ হিরো অর দি ক্রিয়েশন অফ হিরো ইজ বিং done by the indigenous or the historians, those who are engaged in the Dalit discourse with raising questions. Arekta hoche the non-Dalit political parties. They are trying to draw the attention of these communities by erecting their statues for their political benefit. এটুকু আমরা এভাবে চিন্তা করতে পারি এবং যারা ইয়াং জেনারেশন তারা আরো নতুন নতুন প্রশ্ন সামনে নিয়ে আসবে এই আশা করছি।
Thank you so much, sir. We have completed, absolutely exhausted our time. We have to regret to announce to the audience that we cannot connect with Professor Anil Kumar Sharkar. Therefore, we are having to abruptly end this session over here. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind participation. We'll reconvene for the second session at 5:30 sharp. Thank you so much, everyone.